Team is on your side with live interactive coverage beginning soon. The I-Team is on your side right now.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, across our social media platforms here at CBS 13 and Fox 23. I'm the I-Team's Dan Lamparello, and I'm going to be joined here in a second by Sergeant Besty Smith with the National Police Association. She's the spokesperson for them to talk a little bit more about the ongoing search for Robert Card, the accused suspect in Wednesday's mass shooting in Lewiston that left 18 people dead, 13 others injured, and the ongoing search efforts to find him and hopefully bring him to justice. Besty, thank you so much for joining us. You're the spokeswoman with the National Police Association. You obviously speak with law enforcement across the country on a daily basis. And I'd like first just to get your thoughts on where things stand with the investigation here in our state.
Well, I'll tell you, I was a cop for 29 years. I was a hostage negotiator, so we look at what's been happening since this horrific shooting, including last night where personnel, surrounded a home, thought that maybe he was in there. This is for law enforcement. This is an exhausting process. You have got law enforcement resources that are coming in from around the country. But let's not forget that initially, this is a, small town police department. They were assisted by the state police. Of course, now they're assisted by the federal government as well. And, this is a very difficult time. And nobody wants to find Robert Card more than these police officers. And so we've got some breaks. They have a note. They're not releasing all the details. But that speaks to motive and also perhaps what he has decided to do. Typically in these cases, not that this is a typical case, 18 people shot, 13 more wounded. But a guy like Robert Card perhaps doesn't want to live anymore, perhaps isn't alive. And but law enforcement still has to find a body. They have to finish the investigation and bring some closure to the community.
And speaking of that community, just for our viewers who are looking, this shot here is a live shot from one of our cameras at Schmenge's, which is one of the sites of the mass shooting on Wednesday night. There was the bowling alley, Spare Time, and then Schmenge's, which is about a 4-mile drive between the two. And obviously there's a lot of the investigative side of things as well. They still have 2 massive scenes to process. And Besty, can you kind of walk through what they're having to handle and how long that could take before they release these properties back to their owners?
Understand that the investigators at both crime scenes, as well as where they found the vehicle, the other homes and properties that Card had ownership in, but especially the bowling alley and the bar, they have got to process those scenes as though there is going to be a trial and Robert Card, and if there is any other accomplices, we still don't 100% know that, as though there is going to be a trial and they have to prove that he shot and killed 18 people. Yeah. So it is a painstaking process. You have got to collect every bit of evidence, but first you have to photograph every bit of it. And a lot of the photography and the diagramming that's going to happen at those crime scenes is going to go to confirming the eyewitness accounts of how exactly this shooting went down. Again, we all feel like we know what happened here, but we still don't really know. Was there anybody else helping Robert Card? Was there another shooter? Was there someone outside? Plus, there's all the video to go through if there are cameras, but they have got to collect every single casing from these multiple shots and identify where each body was, whose blood is whose. It is just an almost insurmountable task.
Yeah.
And it's great cooperation that we're seeing from law enforcement all around the region, but it's very difficult.
And I want to point out to our viewers, because Robert Card is still on the run, still considered armed and dangerous. Below at the bottom of your screen is the FBI's tip line. They've created a special website just for tips related to this Lewiston shooting. You can upload photos, videos, anything that you might think may help them in their investigation. And something the Commissioner of Public Safety in our state said today, nothing is too small. If you think that it's been submitted already 5 times, submit it again, because it could be something that helps them. And Betsy, maybe you can talk about just how tips like that, we've heard there's been over 500 so far. This website will probably help double or even triple that.
I have been involved in investigations where tips from the public that the people calling in the tips thought were absolutely nothing have actually solved serious crimes. So I really would encourage everyone, if you have a photograph or a video on your phone, or you think you saw something, not just at those locations, but if you were on the roadway that night, or you saw something in a parking lot, or you saw something near the boat launch, or you think maybe you had contact with Robert Card prior to this, maybe you saw him somewhere out and about in a store carrying something. No tip is too small and too innocuous because understand what investigators are trying to do. They are trying to piece together a timeline, not just from the shooting on, but prior to the shooting, because, motive is going to be so incredibly important here, especially, if we do end up having a trial. And also think about the closure that this community is ultimately going to need. Everybody's asking now, why would this happen in our community? Why did he target these locations and these people? And closure is an important way for family members, friends, and really the entire community to be able to eventually move on from this.
And obviously, to do that, our law enforcement agencies across our state are partnering with the region. Yesterday, I was up in Bowdoin, where I saw, I grew up in Massachusetts, and I saw a neighboring town's police department had officers all the way up in Bowdoin, Maine, 2.5 hours away. And I just want to bring up a map here to kind of show where the search is looking at today. And that is this bend in the Androscoggin River, right in here in the town of Lisbon. And we heard from Michael Soschuk earlier today, the Commissioner of Public Safety, saying they're bringing in dive teams from across the region, as well as the Maine Warden Service. Betsy, can you just talk about, when you have a river and a body of water involved in a search like this, what level does that take things, and does it create any more difficulty?
Well, it is when we think about underwater recovery teams, dive teams, and just in general, when you think about scuba diving, you might think of a vacation in the Cayman Islands and clear, beautiful water. What these divers are having to deal with is cloudy, murky, cold water, and they are looking for sometimes the smallest of things. It's not just a body that they're looking for, but we have to think about, did he dump those firearms? Did he dump ammunition? Did he dump other things in these bodies of water that the divers are searching for? And this is, again, this is not a fun task. And we also have to remember that there's some physical risk to doing this for underwater recovery teams. Plus, they have to make sure that they are photographing everything, and they have to make sure that they are documenting every little thing that they might see, whether it's something as large as a body or something as small as some ammunition. So this is a very daunting task. They've got to do it absolutely grid by grid by grid, while keeping track of each other, because again, police divers are very much in danger. Anytime you're underwater, it's a dangerous situation, especially in water that is cold and it's hard to see through.
For our viewers just joining us, I'm talking with Sergeant Besty Smith, who is the spokeswoman for the National Police Association, lending her expertise here with us today to talk a little bit about how law enforcement in our state are continuing their search for the gentleman you see there on your screen, Robert Card, who's accused in a horrific mass shooting in Maine's second largest city of Lewiston. 18 people killed, 13 people injured, all Mainers, and we're keeping those families in our thoughts today. And Betsy, looking ahead, where do things go from here? If today we don't have a resolution to finding Robert Card, where do law enforcement go from here?
Law enforcement will continue literally to turn over every single rock, building, anything associated with Robert Card. They are undoubtedly talking to family members, friends, acquaintances, and they're going, as they are doing now, they will continue to move outward so that they can find him. They have the Bortec team is here. We have the U.S. Marshals involved. Nobody can find a fugitive more successfully than the United States Marshals. So we have a great deal of faith in law enforcement to be able to find him, because we must be able to find him, whether it is a dead body or it is a live fugitive hiding from law enforcement, or perhaps plotting another attack. Law enforcement will not give up until they find him. But remember, in all of these jurisdictions from Lewiston on out, life needs to go on, and police officers need to be able to answer 911 calls and take crash reports and all of that. And so I think you will continue to see this outpouring of other law enforcement agencies helping Lewiston and the surrounding county.
Obviously, mass shootings like this have happened quite often over the past few years. Can you remember a time where a suspect has gotten away from the scene and has been on the run for this long?
Oh, sure. In the last 40 years that I have been involved in law enforcement, there are still lots of fugitives out there. Now, when you look at a mass shooting, mass shootings that get this kind of notoriety, we usually get a resolution within about a week. And I know it's frustrating to the community. It's frustrating to the public. There's a lot of assumptions made. But I think we're going to have a resolution to this pretty quickly. The water situation, the potential that he is in the water, that he did commit suicide, that has some real potential to it. And I just want to remind people that this is not television. This is not a TV show. We're not going to have it resolved within an hour or a couple of episodes. And I know that's incredibly frustrating. But I think that we will know sooner than later where Robert Card is. I hope that if he is found deceased, that we are able to figure out why he committed this horrific act.
Betsy, my last question for you, and I think it's on the minds of many of the people in our state, is we're a very vast state. We're a very forested state, a very rural state. A lot of people, tomorrow on normal circumstances, is supposed to be the beginning of deer hunting season up here. We're still not sure if that's going to be postponed in wake of the circumstances. But does the rural nature of our state play a major factor into whether they find this gentleman dead or alive?
Well, it absolutely does. For folks who are not familiar with Maine, it's a gorgeous state. It's an absolutely beautiful state. And as a deer hunter, I can imagine how you're going to have some perhaps frustrated hunters if they try to postpone deer season. And it does make this searching so much more difficult. But let me add this. Folks from Maine they're resilient. They understand the outdoors. And so I think that one of the breakthroughs that we could possibly see in this case is that somebody who is a hunter or an outdoors woman or man may bring forth evidence indicating where Robert Card is. I mean, these tip lines have had hundreds and hundreds of tips already, things that people are finding. So when you have people out in the woods who know those wooded areas well, who know the wilderness well, they know when they are seeing things that are out of place. So I think that could actually be a real positive for law enforcement and ultimately for the community to be able to help with this horrific situation. People just want to do something. They want to be helpful.
And you even mentioned, and I think it was also mentioned during the press conference today, that these tip lines, when they've been set up nationally for big events, I think back to the marathon bombing in 2013, those tip lines were influential in helping to solve the crime.
Oh, they absolutely were. When I actually took a tour of the entire crime scene from where the first bombs went off and then where it all ended up. And in fact, you can go to the neighborhood now. There's still bullet holes in a few of the houses. But the way that all played out, the cops, and we've interviewed them, were getting real-time information from those tip lines. The community was incredibly helpful in that Boston Marathon bombing case and the ultimate shootout. And I think now, and this is one of the things too about Maine, their people really say, Maine supports their law enforcement officers. Law enforcement officers in Maine, the communities tend to be smaller. It's a very pro law enforcement, pro military kind of a state. And again, that is very helpful because, a lot of times in homicide investigations in places like, my native Chicago or New York or LA, there's no cooperation. In Maine, there's cooperation. And that is going to make, I think, all the difference. It also, I just want to add, it makes all the difference in the mental health of those law enforcement officers who are dealing with this. When the community supports you, and the cops are seeing it there. I'm not sure it appears on video at all, but I've been told that the police officers in Maine, people are offering them food and water and shelter and the bathrooms in their homes and all of that. And you just cannot imagine how incredibly helpful that is for a real bunch of tired cops in Maine right now.
And we've covered a few of those situations up in Lewiston, people bringing things, especially, and I'll show actually the scene where it happened was right here at Schmenge's, where people were crossing over and giving those people lunch and water and pizza and other things just to show their appreciation. So definitely a state. We see that during the wintertime up here or during a hurricane with our line workers. Mainers are a giving bunch, and it just shows when, unfortunately, whenever we have times of tragedy, our state usually pulls together and comes through it even stronger. That's for sure. Sergeant Besty Smith with the National Police Association. Thank you so much for joining us and lending your expertise to our viewers today to give them an understanding of what our officers are going through across the state as they continue to search for this violent, armed, and dangerous suspect in this Lewiston mass shooting. And for our viewers, if you see down the bottom of your screen a scroll, that is the tip line to send your tips to. And this obviously will be something we continue to follow throughout the day. So thanks so much for joining us, Betsy.
Thanks for having me.